Okay. I think my audio's on now. Okay, so today I will be soldering up the 8 circuit boards I need to complete the Smart Hub project. This is the one I've been testing with for the past little while. Frank, you're able to join. Cool. Hopefully the audio is loud enough. So this is an assembled one, which has the power jack on it, although I have to swap out the wiring for it. I have new wire coming tomorrow. So the rest of them I have the cases for already. Just obviously, even if I finish the boards, I need the wire to finish them. Like this one. This one's already completed. The only thing left is the power jack. And obviously, case fits together nicely. So, have a fresh stack of circuit boards. And to do the solder paste, I have stencils. So I chose to start with this side. The reason being is the other side of the circuit board has the rather large capacitor, which obviously would make it difficult to place the circuit board inside the oven face down with this one capacitor. So instead, I do this side, which has relatively lower component height. If I pull the board out of this. So this has a relatively more flat layer height for the components. So it's the side that I stencil first, which is why the 3D print that holds everything in line is very thin. And it also means I can just fit a circuit board in place. It's a snug fit. So I can fit the circuit board in place, and then once I align it, I put clear tape to help hold it in place, and then it keeps all the holes aligned, which means I can easily put the paste over it for each thing. But because there's already parts on it, once it comes out to do the other side, this one is a fair bit thicker so that the parts can fit in it but not hit my desk, and thus I can easily do it. This is good for lower board counts. If you're doing a lot, then you're going to start looking at framed stencils and production stuff, but for doing a few one-offs here and there for projects, this is very, very handy. Yes, the DIN rail actually came out fairly nicely. Let's see here. I designed it so that not only are the mounts in the case aligned through the center of the case, but if you stick a screw through here, there's plastic on the other side, so you can't accidentally hit the circuit board. And then the DIN rail nicely fits inside, and then when the DIN rail is in place, it is also centered with the hub. Okay, so that has a board in it. Let's get some parts. One, two, three. Ooh, almost have enough. Yep. main part that everything runs on, the ESP12F. So much nicer just working with this thing instead of trying to use the Wii mouse. D1 Mini. D1 Mini is good for prototyping on the bench, but I even tried using it on the Smart Switch, and yeah, converting to just using this little guy is so much nicer. Let's see, 27 ohm, 15K, 1.5K. Let's double check the circuit board. 22 picohertz, 100 nanofarad. That is the data line, MOSFETs, power regulator, buttons. I think that's everything. Nope, need the USB chip. And 27 picofarad capacitors. Nope, drop that. Well, lumber prices are finally coming down, so I might actually end up building my desk at some point. Okay, let's start counting parts out. So you guys in another lockdown in Australia? Because it looks like we're heading to our fourth one, and our local provincial government is on vacation. Just no news, no nothing, just lollygagging, spending more time trying to make the corporations money instead of actually doing stuff in the interest of the citizens. It's even funnier because the group will typically have 4 main groups, although typically it's the 2 that always end up winning an election, and the one always says, oh, we're gonna save money and we're gonna trim the fat and all that stuff. And the funny thing is yes, they do make absurd amounts of cuts to services and stuff, but they never actually ever save money, which is always hilarious. 6, 7, 8. Sixth lockdown. Yikes. I love these buttons. Fairly easy to solder, and they are decently priced, and they are clicky as all clicky can be, which is great. I like the physical feedback of it working, which is great. Which is why I also use them on the Smart Switch, which I'm going to actually do a revision to that board. I want to try and fit a Ethernet onto it. Found a module on AliExpress that has a very minimal layout, both with yeah, this desk does not work very well for seeing things. It's part of, like, when I build the new desk, I want to put mounts in for cameras and have proper lighting and all over it so that I don't have to fuss around with trying to set things up. But this little guy right here. It's definitely small. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Counting out the parts that are much easier to identify. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One more. Oh, and the other side of the board uses buttons too. Might as well cut those out. There we go. That's all the buttons I should need. Should have enough of these. Board uses 3. These are to suppress spikes on the data line. It was recommended for the spec sheet for the USB hub IC, which this is actually the smallest chip I've done. Well, I tried doing one smaller, but I couldn't get it to successfully work. But this is the smallest chip I've done with surface mount soldering and actually have it work, and that's a 32V QFN. It sits right in the middle, and it even has a center pad, which is kind of harder to do. So you put too much solder, it'd be very easy for it to for the paste to squeeze underneath and bridge it. But this is the host controller. This is what communicates to your computer and then allows it to send data to the 4 other ports. Three, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. With 4 to spare. Also found during my testing yesterday that Windows is not a fan of data line switching. On I can plug something into the port and turn it on and off and all that kind of stuff, and every once in a while Windows complains that it didn't recognize something, even though it's still working and you can turn it back on and it recognizes it, no problems. It only ever shows up when it turns off, which is weird. And it only happens on some ports. It doesn't happen each time either, which is even weirder. But it does work, which is the whole point, I guess. Oh no, I think I just flung a part onto the floor. I wonder if I lost it, or if I can find it. Found it. Hey, yeah. Definitely be happy to have this project done. This one's taken a long time. The biggest part of it was the OTA code. Spent months on that stuff. But the fun thing with that code is that it does not only work on this ESP, it works on the ESP32, and it works on the ESP01, which is only a megabit. Whereas this is 4 megabit. So having something small enough yet versatile enough to work on pretty much everything you'd want it to work on is pretty darn handy. And theoretically there should only be a few small changes that would need to be made to make that code work with an ESP that had Ethernet. I know for certain without a complete revamp it won't work with any of the Atmel chips, but it'll definitely work with the ESP stuff. Solder paste. I'm using this generic lead base solder paste. It's relatively inexpensive, but I've had great success with it. Obviously, you'd probably want to use brand name, but for what I normally keep at the bench, it works very well, and I store it in my fridge so that it stays longer. And typically buy new solder paste every couple months, well, every 6 months, just to stop it from going bad. And I absolutely despise lead-free solder paste. that stuff you have to pay the big bucks for it, and even with the big bucks stuff, it's annoying, especially if you have to do any rework on it. At which point you're pretty much taking solder wick to it and cleaning it, and then putting lead-based stuff on it anyways. If we set up proper recycling facilities, we wouldn't have to switch to lead-free stuff all the time. Looks like I missed a few holes when I last cleaned this. Silly me. Tends to work better if it can actually put paste through the hole. Let's use some alcohol to clean this. Ah, the good old smell of isopropyl alcohol. That's better. Okay, solder based. I am doing the Smart Hub assembly, Aaron. I have 2 already done, not on stream, but I've been using them for programming and stuff for the past many months. But now I'm actually doing the circuit board, so this is an assembled hub in its case. And then this is the assembled board. This is the side I'm currently working on, and then there's surface mount parts on the other side of it as well. ESP. Yes, I have sold all 10 that I'm making, except one is obviously for myself, because I do have to do more revisions to the code, because I want to cut down those 4,400 lines of code. But the other ones are sold. Some of the parts are hard to get, so I have no idea if I can actually make more. But I have sold some. I misaligned some of the solder on this. Let's try that again. Take these parts off and redo it. Let's see. Happy to keep that in mind, Aaron. So my plan is actually to, so the whole reason I started designing it was John had mentioned it during a live stream close to a year ago. And then I had the design, and then a few people were interested in it. So I started making it, and then I didn't have the money to keep trying to make changes to it, and a few people bought into it. And that gave the money that I needed to finalize this version of it. I know people would like USB-C and USB 3, and I just haven't had time to both look at data sheets for it, and with the IC shortage, I just know that's going to turn into a whole can of worms, trying to do USB-C with power delivery and all that kind of stuff on it. So that won't be a fairly straightforward thing to design. So that will take a while, but for most of what this hub is really good for, which is if you're doing microcontrollers and you want to start testing things and loading firmware fairly easily, this would let you do it, because you could automate it potentially. So the one person that I'm sending one to is John, and he does not know it's coming, so shh, keep that a secret. Yeah, and then the smart switches are also inspired by John, so I have this that will also be hiding in a box very shortly, heading his way. But let's try that stencil again. Oh, that's the wrong one. There it is. Can't always buy everything that John sells, so I figured sending him an item that was inspired by him is something I could do. These end holes, it really does not like putting the paste on. I'm not big enough of a YouTuber yet to enable super chats, actually. At least the last time I checked, it requires you to hit a certain level of status. It's the same for ad revenue and stuff like that. Okay, let's try this again. Be curious how much it would cost to get these made by JLC. I get the circuit boards from them, but all the parts can come from them as well. I have no idea. So with USB-C for that hub, the idea was that it was going to be 7 ports. To kind of rival what's already on the market, and I've only really found one company that makes something. Those starts at like $1,200, and it's locked firmware and everything, and it's absolutely ridiculous. I think they make a USB 2 version, but can't recall. But they make varying versions, but I don't know if I'll do PD on each port. It would depend on what components would look like and fitting everything. I know at the minimum it's probably going to be a 4-layer board, so that's going to add cost. And then you're going to have a fun time trying to find a suitable host chip, which I have found a few, and I have PDFs saved to sift through later. Haven't had the time. I've been focusing on this, and then I briefly took a break and did the LED controller. And then I have a few other things to potentially do after this is done that I want to focus on. One of them is I have an idea for essentially a tiny home village that I'm hoping I can work on, and then convince some people that I know to talk to other people, and then maybe actually make it happen. Give myself long-term life solution of sorts, and a job while I'm at it. But we shall see what happens. Gotta plan one way or another for the future. As I'd prefer to avoid being homeless again. Done it once, not again, thank you very much. 100 nanofarad. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, sounds about right. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are all 0608 parts for the passives, that is. It's projects like this that I really want the PNP, which is why I'm following the Index PNP. That is an awesome project. And as soon as they can confirm it works with 0608 parts, 08 or 03, I can't remember. 03, my bad. Yeah, as soon as they can confirm it works with these small parts, and then probably wait till they have kits available, because it's probably cheaper to get them to source everything in bulk than it would be for me to try and find things individually. Yeah. Right, I see chip. And okay. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. Yeah, the R&D for it would probably be a lot. I got lucky with this because somebody paid extra, which pretty much saved me on R&D costs, because otherwise I don't think I would have pulled it off as quickly as I did. And I spent way more hours on code than I thought I would. Although, granted, with the code done, it should make USB-C easier to do. Because all the core code is there and I know how to make it work. Yeah, it would come down to component cost for the most part. And yes, I would expect USB-C to be much more popular. And I had somebody point out that a really good use case would be actually in data centers or even businesses that have networking equipment, because you could automate backups by having it turn on a specific hard drive through USB. Have a program on the server running to save whatever important documents, and then typically you just go in once a week, remove the hard drives, move them off site for storage, rinse and repeat every once in a while. You can essentially automate it all. Ballpark, probably north of $500 minimum. It would really come down to that I'd have to test a lot of parts. You'd have to come up with a design that you think works and then test parts, which is what I had to do on this one, especially for the data line switching. That was one of the harder things to do, was to come up with how to switch everything. And USB-C would add an extra wrinkle to that in terms of power delivery, because if you want power but you also want power delivery but you don't want data through the USB, then you'd have to either strategically place the data enabling / disabling and or move its position in the circuit overall. And I know the current chip that I'm using to keep track of how much power everything's using, that one has a limit on the I2C bus, although theoretically you should be able to use an I2C mux. I just would have to look into it and see how easily it can or can't be programmed to run through mux. Unless you go to an ESP32 and give yourself an extra I2C bus separate from everything. That's an option. Would also end up switching from the MCP03 over to the 23017, which is what's used on the LSC, because you'd need more I/O than this one. This one only needed 8. Darn, these things are small. I originally had the wrong footprint for these two, which was annoying. I have an extra one. And 1.5 ohm. One, two, I think that's it. I only have 2. Just realized I did not put any music on. Wearing the headphones and not listening to music. Silly me. That's better. Always gotta have something going in the background. And then 27. That. 2 of these. If I'm not mistaken, these are for the crystal, which is on the other side of the board. $15K. 9 of these. This board overall isn't too bad to assemble, it's just if they were all the same part, you could assemble it fairly quickly because you could just dump the package out, but there's so many different values for everything that it takes a little longer. 2 parts left. What do I want to do? Wait a minute. What part did I just put on? I don't think it was that part. I think I put the right one on. That's 15. It's the capacitor. Yeah, okay. And 827 ohm resistors. And 22 picofarad final parts. Need 10 of them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Of course, they all go everywhere. Should 3D print some mini bins for these things. For being on the bench, I can pre-count and sort things for projects like this. I already bought storage shelves for when I do my big desk, which would put a lot of parts in mini bins above me, but having really small, shallow cups almost be handy. Although I imagine you could probably find something online already made rather than 3D printing. Although at least with 3D printing, I can put a provision for labels if I wanted. I think I'm short capacitor. Let's turn the oven on. It's gonna make its annoying fan sounds. Love to hack this oven. Put in a Noctua fan and then have it talk MQTT. Be nice. And then if I ever get a PNP, swap out the Droidcam line for what do you call it? Stainless steel conveyor belt. See if I can't make it automatic. Start that and get the stencil. And the next board. Oh, that did not work at all. Did not have that aligned. Let's try doing that again. Oh, that's better. Pop that out. Start placing parts. What I've started doing on a lot of my boards lately is For the silk screen, I put all the board part numbers for most things. I missed the data line switching. I didn't put any name for them. But all the passives, I have the numbers, and then for like some of the capacitors, there's 4 that only have the capacitor number. Those are 0.1 UF, and then I've done it on, I think, the other side of this board or one of my other boards for resistors. If I leave it just the resistor number, it's a 10K. Makes it a little easier spotting things, but also makes it easier that if something blows up, you know what part's supposed to be there. And I'm most certainly not sanding off part numbers from parts either. Hate when companies do that. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In case you're wondering, these parts have an itty bitty microscopic dot on them, and the board has a nice line to tell me which way around these go. But that dot can be hard to see at times, that is for sure. that. Four of these. Hands not being steady tonight. My goodness. Oh, soldering oven's about to go squealing. So, noise alert. And that's one board, one side down. That's why I love having the oven. It takes about 8 minutes a board. Under 8 minutes. Just makes things so much easier. I used to do the hot air. And yeah, I got tired of that very quickly. Yeah, that's part of the reason I want to hack this oven, is so that I can link it to my... what I mean? I have a tower light that I've been slowly integrating my systems into. And I'd love this oven to talk MQTT and then just trigger the tower light instead of its obnoxious squealing sound. This is 15K. Need 9. 2, 3, 4. Come on, out you come. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There we go. How many people we got joining in? This is the late night crew. Ah, 5 people. It's almost a record. I think it might actually be a record. 5 people at once. Let's see. 8. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last part. 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Export out of the oven and don't see any noticeable issues. That's the first board out of the oven. And this one can now go in the oven. I haven't missed any parts on it. Start. Put this one off to the side. And export. Yep. Now, this switch here, a little bit extra. Let's remove that. Oh, yes. Now, the only issue I would have, and I'd have this with pretty much any PNP, is I don't typically deal with large volumes. Now, some parts are really good pricing. Like when I bought these 27 PF, so I bought like 500. This I could run in a feeder. But a lot of parts are a bit more expensive. Like I could only get these 15K, 27 ohm, and 1.5K from DigiKey, and the price is a bit higher. Although I don't think it was too bad. So I only bought like 100 of them. Which is a lot harder to run in a feeder, because once you first load it, it's going to waste a few. So chances are I'm setting up a tray with them, and then I got to train the PNP to know where everything is. Whereas if I can buy in much larger quantities, it's a lot easier to just stick a feeder on it and have it run through, which is why when I try to design things, I take the extra time to try and find parts that can use a lot of standard parts. And that way you're not fiddling with it all the time, trying to put in like custom capacitors and stuff. But all the parts that I used, especially for the USB circuit, which is what most of these passive parts are for, is the data sheet for this USB hub. Had a very nice schematic in it, which made it very handy, as I copied the schematic part for part. Now I did read up on it, and a few people have managed to remove parts from it, but figured the manufacturer recommends something, it's probably just better to follow it, and it works fine, so must be doing something right. Also, doesn't help these boards are double-sided, so I'm trying to do the one side at a time because I'm doing all of them now. If I was doing just one, obviously I would just flip it over and do the other one. But it's easier to open up parts for the one side, which I put the parts in 2 different boxes to make it easier when pulling parts out to know which ones are for which. Yeah, James, you're able to make it. Cool. It takes less than 8 minutes in the oven. It's just a little over 7. I'll try and watch it when I hit the off, when it beeps again. So it has a little timer going. It's been in for 3:21 so far. I don't think they've stated a cost yet for the index. They only recently started getting parts from suppliers, and they had a hell of a time getting low-end order quantity, because the niche the index is trying to fill is small to mid-scale manufacturing. So they're setting up 3D printers, they're setting up the pick and place, and then they eventually want to experiment with conveyor belt systems to start linking things. So they started getting parts from some suppliers. I think most of the parts were good, few they found not so good. But the 3 machines they just started assembling is so that they can start assembling the motherboard for the machine. Both, one, it's a chance to test the machine to see how well it works, I imagine it's probably going to be in the $2,000 range for the machine, all said and done. But I'll end up finding out as time goes on. The big thing for me is I want to be able to do these passives. And that is one of the goals, is to do 0603. And so far, the testing of everything it seems to be working. Now I haven't seen much development on it lately, and I haven't looked at the Discord, but the other thing they wanted to work on was the ability to have a solder paste dispenser. So if they get that working too, that'd be really nice, because that, especially for smaller manufacturing where you don't mind waiting a little while for it to do the solder paste, and then you could have it take a photo and you can have it wait. You look at the photo, make sure it did it correctly, and then tell it to place parts. Would be pretty handy. Not having to spend the extra money for a stencil. These stencils are typically an extra $8, but they really kill the shipping price. It's why you have to order them as a custom size too, otherwise you get a really big sheet and they put it in stiff cardboard and everything. Let's see. Just hit the 7-minute mark on the oven, and it should be nearing its time to beep. 7 minutes, 10 seconds. That's how long that board took in the oven. find the hardest thing with R&D right now, other than cost, is finding parts. Certain parts are much harder to get than others, and it's very annoying. And it's even worse when they jack the price up on a part a million times over. Saw an STM32 for $92. Somebody posted it on Twitter. That is absolutely absurd. We might as well just write it as out of stock. Last part. Two, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? 9, 10. And there's another one ready. This one comes out of the oven. Visual inspection. Looks like a pin here. Didn't get solder. Or at the very least it got less solder than the others. But everything else on it is fine. So there's another one done. And another one in the oven. Stoked. So it's 2. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Where'd I put my juice? Oh, that's better. Stencil. Normally I don't do such a tight tolerance on these 3D prints. Oh well, it still fits, and it does the job. should really be doing it in one motion, but that tool works very well. Ooh, I just had a good thought. So earlier I was talking about how it'd be nice to have mini bins that you could put parts in. So I could pre-count them and rip them out of their packaging and have them in little bins. because obviously you don't, when you're dealing with these little capacitors here, you don't really need a large bin for them. And too large of a bin, you're going to have a hard time reaching in and grabbing it. But then I was thinking you'd probably want, if you 3D print them, you could put a little tab on it, so you could use a label maker. But then that gets tedious if you are doing a if you're doing different designs that have different part requirements, because then you're ripping off labels, unless you make a large assortment of these bins to have all the different values you keep on stock for a project. But what if instead you find an e-ink display and you just put a nice small connector on it, like a pogo connector, where you could type on a keypad or Arduino or something, type essentially a label, push it up against the pogo connector, it flashes the display, and then it's set. You don't need power to keep it running, so there's very minimal components you'd need on it. Makes me wonder. I know Adafruit sells e-ink displays, so let's find out. Adafruit. Obviously, I probably end up looking on AliExpress, but that one's, well, that's the Breakout. I was gonna say that's really cheap. So you'd want to find a small one too. That one's fairly small. That's 2-inch diagonal. Don't really need flexible. It's this one here. 250 by 122 pixels. What's the size of it? Hmm. 61.3 by 40.2 by 6.7. It's a little big. You need something like extra small. Yeah, that would work, but you would still need to print labels for everything. Unless you make a remix of that turntable and embed either a MyFair RFID or an NFC in it. I'd probably go RFID, it's a little easier. And you could just have an Arduino off to the side with a little cable, and then have a regular LCD screen. So as you turn the table, you can program what each spot has. So as you turn it, it can change the readout. That would work. It would work very well for my uses, at least. That's an option. Look at me coming up with more projects. Because at least that way you don't always have to put labels on it, and you could very easily just reprogram a new label. Heck, you link it to MQTT and you could just send it a whole list of what's in which bin, and all it has to do is look at the RFID information of each bin. Oh. actually have a few RFID codes on hand. I would obviously have to buy the very small ones that I could embed in a 3D print. Might have to load up the 3D files and try and modify them. The only thing I don't have are the bearings that are used in that design by Sion. Not hard to get though. And I'd probably go with a different LCD. The only ones I have on hand are the normal character displays, as well as these really miniature OLEDs. I may even have one of the rectangular ones. It might be good enough, to be honest. But for like a finalized version, probably go to something like the color IPS display that we're using for the rack controller. So then you could actually color code things so that you don't always have to try and read the part number. You could just have everything color coordinated. If it's a capacitor, if it's this or that kind of thing. You could easily have a node red flow with different projects and have a config saved of what's in what box. So all you have to do is click one button and it preloads what parts are expected, and then as you turn it you can fill it. Pot. There's another one ready. Eagle. Double check a pin here. Okay, there's another one soldered up. Clicky clicky. And close the oven, start that one, grab the next board. Halfway there, well, quarter of the way there, because you have to do both sides of the board. Next up, PNP. Yeah. Yeah, if I do more of these, I think I'm gonna have to raise the price a little for labor. Because these are tedious. So, anyone else doing anything fun right now? Or just watching me work through these ever so slowly? Did I miscount parts? How the heck did I do that? 1, 2, 3. Oh, I better not be short parts. Oh, I got enough. Ooh. I've been soldering with this oven for like 3 or 4 years now. Yeah. Oh, hey, cable tie. Woo. Yeah, I'm not any YouTube star, so it's definitely a small group watching me. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I have just enough of this part. Oh, but freak out that I somehow miscounted what I had available. I've already done that before. But I ordered those parts weeks ago. And I already have them. That's done. Those are done. Okay, next parts. Oh man. Actually, it's funny. The other day, I looking at my bank statement, and my bank gave me an extra $5, and then sent me an email saying, "We're sorry um, about the quality of something, so here's money." There was no real reason for it, other than we're sorry about such and such. Although the such and such was very generic, so it's like, okay, thank you. Huh. Although I partly feel that it may have been because I had to sit on the phone line for like ever to try and get a new bank code. They've been having an issue lately where the new codes are bricking on people. And in my case, I've had two of them brick, my credit card and my debit card. So yeah, that sucks when you can't use your card and you need to buy something. I'm Canadian. I am in Canada. I'm told I have an accent. Some people either try to place it as British or Australian, um, but it's more of a speech impairment because I'm partially deaf. Um, oh, annoying beep inbound. Um, but yeah, I am Canadian. I did have British foster parents for a while, and Jamaican, so I can pick up some slang here and there. Not so much on the humor, though. I'm a fairly straightforward person. Yeah, this part here, I ordered 100 of them, and when I got it, I was like, "Wait, that doesn't look like 100." And yeah, they're really small parts. Oh, actually, it's funny you talk about accents because there are quite a few animals that do it too. I think cats have different accents, and then what do you call it? I think sheep are the other one that are known to have accents as well, which I think it's fascinating that people study that kind of stuff. I love random information. I will find information for things all of the time. I don't even want to say how many spec sheets I looked at trying to come up with this design. Um, like, in reality, like, what circumstances have to happen in your scientific career for you to start thinking or noticing, let alone logging, that animals have accents? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, I do. It's why I specifically do this side first, is because most of the parts are flat, so it doesn't push it too high to the element. Whereas the other side has that big capacitor. So yes, I do the other side of this board in the oven. I just figured it's easier to lay out the parts for one side on my workbench area here, than to try and maneuver things around. No, I've never, not once have I ever had parts fall off. Yeah. And I'm using the default temp wave too on this oven. I've had no issues. I've only had issues with top parts not getting enough heat. If I try to fit too many boards in at once, I could probably get away with 2 of these at once if they're lengthways, but if I try to put them sideways, it wouldn't work. But it's a little more effective to, for this board at least, to just place one at a time. Manual placing, that is. Otherwise, solder is probably going to be sitting too long between trying to place parts on 2 boards and then move them to the oven. It might sit too long, and then the paste, I find, can go dry and cause issues. There are boards that I've done that way. I did one that was an LED board, and in the 7 minutes that it'd be running, I could finish 4 more and have a bit of a queue going. Which is why I want to try and modify one to have a conveyor belt, so I could easily have it load things and then move them out and let them cool and so on and so forth. And then obviously eventually link it to a pick and place machine. So that one. Well, this one shifted. Did solder though, which is good. Well, there's another one done, and let's put that one in the oven. So, just as a recap, 4 of them done. On the one side, obviously. So, you know what? It's been smudging on me, and that's why. Let's clean this off. Yeah, part of the reason I thought to do live streams of this is, one, you don't see a lot of it on YouTube. But then you always get people that complain, oh, this project takes so long, or why does this cost so much money, and all the other excuses people come up with for saying why they're not supporting people. So I figured, one, I can show what I'm working on a lot easier, and I despise editing videos. So I figured live stream might be more my thing. The only issue and reason I don't do it more often is because my desk is not very optimized to do it. I feel very cramped trying to do it. But also, I usually can't keep enough projects on hand to keep myself busy. So I can't normally do things on a regular basis, which is why I like when I can come up with something like this Smart Hub and people buy into it. Because it gives me something to do. It's also why I like trying to live stream doing circuit board design as well, because you see a lot of half-decent tutorials of how you create a schematic or whatever you need in CAD, but not so much the full process that goes behind it. Like all the spec sheets you'll have to read, and how you may shift parts around, and the number of hours that go into things, and the different revisions and all that kind of stuff. It's definitely niche. I don't expect to make it big, but gives me something to do in the meantime. Which is the only thing you really can do these days, is find something that gives you a little bit of joy and keeps you busy. Right now I use Eagle, but my education license is supposed to expire. So and of course with Windows 10 coming down the pipeline, I think I am finally going to jump ship and go back to Linux. I tried it briefly in high school. And I have my home automation system running on a Linux PC in my network cabinet. So I think I might switch over completely and then go to KCAD and FreeCAD instead of Fusion 360 and Eagle, which is annoying because I've been using them since high school, so over 10 years. And the reason I started with it, because I had the education license and software was good. But I just can't afford the reoccurring subscription. I think it's ridiculous. I wish a company would stop doing it. I want to be able to pay once for my software. If I want the major upgrades other than the security stuff, then you release it as a different version, and then people can buy it if they need it. But yes, I am using Eagle at the moment. And I think I already have files on GitHub for this. I think the only thing I haven't put up there yet is the files for the case. Which, I have to say, this case, I think, turned out very well. You have the embossed, which I've filled in with paint. There's been hints of Windows doing some subscriptions, but they haven't said yes or no. But the one thing they always seem to try and push in Windows 11 is that in order to log in, you have to have a Windows account, which I'm not a fan of. The other thing I liked on this case is the texture. Using the textured print bed, I definitely think was a good call. Like Windows 10 recently started doing it where when you boot it up, it would want you to log in or set up an account. I initially, on my main computer here, I initially had set it up, and then every like week or so, it would send me a notification being like, hey, there's suspicious activity on your account. So I'd go in, and it'd want me to change the password because it thought it was suspicious activity. So you change the password, and then it lets you log in and see what the activity was. It's my own computer pinging their server. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. So I ended up removing my login. And then it kept complaining that it couldn't access it because I changed the passwords and stuff. And then I eventually found a way to completely remove it, and it's stopped asking in the meantime. But I thought that was like the silliest glitch ever. But the other big thing with Windows 11 is a lot of UI changes that just seem bloody silly. Like they're moving the main menu bar is going to be stuck to the bottom and in the middle of the screen, which is worse. For me at least, I tend to keep it on the far corner on the side of my screen because a lot of the CAD programs like to be long. So it's a lot easier to view everything with Windows bar on the far corner of my screen than to be at the bottom of my screen. And I have a multi-monitor setup, so it's nice just having it all the way to one side. And then, of course, the TPM chip requirement. My motherboard is compatible with the TPM, but it needs an extra external chip that you almost pretty much can't go. Yeah. So, who knows? All I know is I'd pretty much rather go to Linux. And the software I need to do that is available. It just means I have to relearn something. Oh, and I'll never be a Mac user, but let's not get into that one. Oh, and we're going to have another beep in a few seconds here. Any moment. I'm not necessarily a Mac fan, it's an Apple issue. Absolutely despise their business practices. What they did in the early years, yeah, that was great. But nowadays, the way they fight right to repair and everything, it's like, oh, it's bad. Like, you can have genuine batteries come from a recycling plant, and go through customs to be sold to a third-party repair business, and then Apple will claim, oh no, those aren't genuine batteries, so they get seized. Like, that's dirty. Like, that's a dirty business practice. Or like, if you take it into the Genius Bar to get repaired, they almost always quote you something absurd, and then never guarantee that your data will be there, because half the time what they're doing is they're just swapping all the parts out for a whole new motherboard and recycling everything. Which is just ridiculous when you could simply repair the one part that's gone bad. Or when people find the flaws in the design and point it out, and then eventually they end up doing a recall or whatever to repair it under warranty, but then repeat the same design flaw in another used model. Like, you already know it doesn't work. Why'd you redo it? All sorts of things have been having that issue, and it sucks. John Deere has started getting in on some of those terrible practices. They talk about being eco-friendly and eco-waste and all that kind of stuff, yet the ones doing the problem are the ones complaining about it. And then last year there was an advertisement run by a lobbyist group for automotive repair. And the advertisement was essentially saying, if you let someone else work on it other than dealerships and stuff, someone's going to stalk you and hack your car and everything, which is both a very terrible advertisement to be running, but also absurdly untrue a million times over. And if you watch Louis Rossmann, where he was at some of the hearings, when the lobbyists realized they were essentially losing, they resort to ridiculous tactics. But more often than not, they would always say the same statement of, we'd really love to have robust conversations with you in private. In other words, we want to give you money, we just can't say it in this public forum, and we'd love to discuss it more, but we want to do it in private. Like, yeah. It doesn't help. You get some senators and stuff in the states that they either don't know any better or they just don't care at this point, and when you are trying to lobby, you can tell they've already made up their mind, and you're just talking to a brick wall, and you're wasting your time being there to vote against something that is really in society's best interest, and the corporations keep winning on it. That's why I like open source. You got many things to gain. Look at 3D printing. Look how far and fast 3D printing has come since certain patents ended. Like, yeah. There, you should be able to post it now, Aaron. And I'll add Frank as a mod as well. Yeah, it blocked the first time. It should work now. But oh, someone's posting in Discord. Oh, somebody's joining. Ooh, lots of stuff happening in general. Yeah, I had to mute the general channel on Superhouse last night. I was trying to do some work on the documentation for this Smart Hub. It's both distracting and tedious conversation that keeps repeating itself over and over. I swear we have the same conversation like every other week. It couldn't hurt to have a mod in case I don't notice something right away. If I ever needed to, it's not hard to revoke it. Yeah, I had to do that on a few other Discords that I was in. Because it got way too... Some of them can get really busy at times, and then it just becomes ridiculous. Honestly, the one function that would be kind of cool to see on Discord would be the ability to unmute certain people. So, like, you could mute channels in general, but if you like what certain people, yes, you can, Aaron Knox. But it'd be nice if you could, have it show you if somebody's posted that you like or you want to follow, kind of thing, without them needing to ping you, so to speak. That would be nice. Yeah, or that too. That could go both ways, I guess. I also think if we stop engaging in certain conversations, it might help too. Because it turns into a loop or an infinity. It just keeps going on and on. Honestly, half the time I can't tell if people are trying to help or if they're, feeling frustrated as I feel frustrated half the time. which is half the time why I don't say anything at all, because I, especially with text, I can't tell half the time. I can't tell if somebody's being serious or not. Like, I can't do it in normal conversation. I wouldn't expect me to be able to do it through text messaging. Although I'm half surprised we don't use, what do you call it? What do you call it? The voice channels. Because a lot of those conversations where it's like rapid, multiple people talking, you could have a far better conversation in the voice channel, to be honest. The biggest thing I notice with the project is if you want something custom, that's fine, but you should be customizing it on your own, because the system is designed to function one way, and if you're having trouble customizing something, then you're probably not the person that should be trying to do it custom. Because then people have to keep trying to adjust things and so on and so forth, and it becomes a mess. Whereas software is set up to work nicely as is. So if you used it as is, you would have far less issues. Not everyone can be... Yeah, it can be more reserved depending on what's happening. Yeah, I guess it could go either way in a voice chat. This is the last part here. Pretty much. It's fine to want custom, but forcing everyone else to do the work, it kind of gets tedious after a while. And then, of course, there always ends up being debugging issues. And yeah, like, what do you do if your house goes down and no one's online? You're just stuck waiting for someone to help you? Like, yeah. And trying to combine everything into one box, I think, is a fool's errand. Because it makes harder to maintain software and to, again, failure points. Like, MQTT works bloody fantastic. And, yeah, it's... Like, if you really needed failback support, then it's not hard to wire up the serial ports. So... Yes, yeah, that is annoying. If you're asking for someone's opinion and then shooting it down, that's just ridiculous. Although I did find with the WebSocket library, it doesn't have direct support for knowing how many clients are connected. You can set it up with a printout saying, like, it's noticed a new client and stuff like that, but there's no guarantee that it notices when a client leaves, although the software does try to clear itself. The only problem is there's no logic you can query to see if things are still connected or how many are connected, even though it is doing stuff on the back end. So I have a hacky way of doing it on this, but the problem it creates is it does not actually try to filter the messages when nothing's connected. So if you do try to connect, it slows itself down and takes an extra few moments for it to actually connect because it's had issues. Oh, that one has a solder bridge. Yeah, I'm gonna need to... There is, but there isn't. It can tell you that something's disconnected, but if your browser doesn't properly send that message, then it has a secondary function to try and clear it. But I haven't found a way to test it if that clear would also trigger it, thus telling my variable that you have indeed left. So you could potentially run into an issue where it doesn't fully update. It shouldn't be noticeable to someone using the Smart Hub, to be honest, but it is a possibility. I really hate these QFNs. Seems like every other pin on them, each one that I've done so far has at least one pin that didn't solder correctly, and this one looks like it got a solder bridge on itself actually. But not hard for me to reflow them and fix it later, which is what I end up doing. I did it on the other ones that I've already made and tested. And then I got wire coming tomorrow so that I can solder up all the power connections. Two more. Do. Ah, good music. Should it be of any interest to people, I have music playlists on my YouTube. I think they're accessible publicly. That I tend to keep on repeat, and then every once in a while I try to download some of it to MP3 for my phone. You can send pings with the library, so I guess that's one way you could do it, to add that extra variable in to be like, hey, are you still alive kind of thing. That way it never misses a disconnect by accident. Actually, it's interesting you talk about Node-RED because I in my testing for the web UI, I'll use the console on Chrome, which it's the way it is now. It gives no errors for anything, but a few times I did it when I was actually in my Node-RED install. Now it's Node-RED with Home Assistant, so it's possible some of the errors are from Home Assistant, but it throws a lot of them. My goodness. It's almost like people either don't look at them or they try to actively ignore it. Hey, it works, I'm not going to touch it. Let's see if I can pull it up. And this is what I can see from my installation. Yeah, over 1,000 errors, 21 warnings, and 3 possible issues. Honestly, I have no idea. I don't think I'm using any WebSockets in Node-RED. Most of it's MQTT, MQTT, change node, template, time, saving variables to Home Assistant. This isn't running. It's an early example of the LSC. Basic control structure for my smart switch for running a demo. Got a function, but it's just changing values. Cabinet lock. Just flow 2 doorbell. The no connection is my cell phone, and that is through through Home Assistant. So the Home Assistant app, because it hasn't sent anything lately, it won't show a connection. So if I hit deploy on Node-RED, which I have recently, it'll go back to a no connection until somebody actually pushes my doorbell, and it has to send something to my phone. Yeah, the last time it was triggered was August 24th. Well, yeah, last time I would have seen it. Is there a way to disable it all at once? Because I have a lot of flows. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's the oven. There we go. Well, you thought it was flow 2, so let's try that. Flow 2, F12. Let's clear the console. And let's reload. So right now it's showing nothing. So that's obviously a good sign. Let's re-enable that one flow. Not showing anything now. Let's try a reload. Weird. Whatever it was from, it's not happening at the moment. Yeah. Refresh. Yeah, all the flows are running right now, so weird. It might be. It might be something external. I have no idea. I don't watch it very often. I just happened to come across it accidentally when I was trying to do stuff and hit the button. F12, that is. On the wrong page. Right. Already got those. Oh, Aaron, with the UI that you're making, you may want to look at my Smart Hub code even the OTA code that I have, because the way I do the config sequence is it has the web address, and then it adds each variable as a slash something question mark, and then fills things in with information, and then the code itself on the ESP, if it's null, then it doesn't do anything with that variable. If it's there, then it compares it to its prior information. If it's different, then it knows to save it and saves it to the flash. I'm not sure how you're doing the architecture, but that may be useful in terms of setting config for a device with the admin UI, and then obviously having something on the ESP that can communicate with some UI when it's plugged in via Ethernet or whatever to tell it, hey, I'm here, do you recognize me, kind of thing. And then probably work off of the easiest way would probably be MAC addresses for it to save a device that it recognizes. I based it off someone else's, to be honest. It's essentially a web form, and it fills all the information into the address. And then the ESP is able to post that information. I figured it was the easiest way to do it because it was all built in. But most of the reason I didn't use anyone else's code was because it needed certain functions and only certain functions, and not extra space used. And then a lot of examples for ESP are using a basic web server, and I wanted to use an async server so that things could run fluidly. And if you try and add a delay or whatever into this code, it will scream at you in terms of slowness. You will notice it right away. But it also means everything I find flows nicely and makes for a very responsive UI. Although the HTML probably needs to be run through. I think the HTML's fine, it's probably the CSS that has extra stuff that isn't needed. The one thing I did find the other night, though, is the buttons on that web UI stopped communicating after a while. Now, those were not running through the WebSocket, so I'm probably going to switch that over. So, for now, they are disabled, but it's something I will change in a revision of the software. But the main reason I suggested that part for you for the web UI is just because that's something the ESP already has available to it in terms of how it can communicate, rather than trying to fuss with certain UIs, APIs and stuff like that. Building off of something that we know can work might make things a little easier. Oh, you want to put the hub in the UI, do you? Yeah, sadly all the 10 boards are accounted for. Although I imagine once I send John one, might get asked by a few people for 'em. Well, the other device that I actually have parts on hand for, grab it here. Although I do want to make a few changes to it, including trying to add Ethernet, and this is something I could send to you if you wanted to play around with my OTA code, because I'll put it on this as well. Now this will have a similar web UI as the Smart Hub. Just obviously I can't tell you current, but at the very least it can tell you the state of a button press. I just haven't added it to the code. But this is the smart switch. So if you wanted to play with UI code for my devices and how everything works with OTA and whatnot, this would probably be something simple that I can send to you. Because I have more boards and parts on hand to make this. Oh no, I have lots of these smart buttons. I don't plan to build my workshop anytime soon, and by the time I do it, I'm hoping to try and fit an Ethernet jack onto that thing. But it wouldn't be hard to assemble one without shorting myself on it, which is why I mentioned it. And that one I actually have an Australian compatible plate, although I think you're in the UK, so but I actually have two designs of this. This version where it's lights up a ring, and then I have another one where it lights up a singular dot. I much prefer the ring ones because I have animations that can light up the 4 lights and rotate and act as a timer where it can turn off each pixel one by one kind of thing, but you run it through Node Red, so it can be like essentially a true timer. Also have fading on it all, and yeah, works nicely. Have fading on the LED controller as well. Hopefully Ben gets his somewhat soon. It's a shame tracked shipping in my country is stupidly expensive. Last parts for this board. In the oven. Last one. There we go. Oh, nice. Should really clean this more often between uses. I have a feeling the solder balls in this are a bit on the thicker side, which is pushing the limits of those really thin parts. Sounds good. Have a good day, Frank. Yeah, I'm almost done this last board, and then I think I will call it time. My eyes are getting a bit tired from staring at this, which happens from time to time. So I will probably do the other side of the board on a live stream tomorrow, and then also by that time I should have the wire needed for the power ports, and I'll be able to wire them up, flash them, and test them. Now y'all just gonna make me jealous. I got wives. Well, just gonna finish the one board, as I said, and then I'll live stream tomorrow. I was gonna start this live stream earlier, but had some dinner and I felt really tired afterwards, so I took a nap. $32. Wow. I've only had one girlfriend, and that was in high school, and it was terrible, terrible time, terrible timing, just bad. Yeah. I don't like. I do the live streaming just because easier than me trying to edit footage. And at least this way, if people have questions and want to learn something, they can ask. Try to keep a steady eye on the chat. I think I missed one. Weird. Let's find that bag. And last part. That's everything. Stop that one. Okay. Well, that's 9 boards. Sorry, 7 boards. Number 8 is in the oven. Let's clean this off again. Save that one for tomorrow. Put it in its box. Keep everything in its box and labeled too. Be able to find everything. Also did these ones the other week. They turned out nice. These ones were a lot easier to assemble, minus all the through-hole stuff. But I really liked that 3D printer demo someone did. Where they converted a 3D printer to do through-hole soldering. I could see myself making one of those if I were to do a lot of these. Especially because we decided for the ecosystem to switch to pin headers. That way, if somebody has to change the I2C address on something, they don't have to know soldering, which makes sense. It just adds a little extra step though in assembly. These boards, I took the extra time to do soldering for the ground to give it extra capacity, although it's got a whole ground fill for it, so I don't anticipate any issues with trying to get signal through these. But they turned out nice. I look forward to actually using it in a rack, but should be a little while off. Waiting on that one. Clean up my desk a little. Other than that, I think I'm going to end the stream. And then tomorrow I can do final assembly on things. So the other side, not as complicated, which is nice. MCP, USB, 2 buttons, you got your resistors and current measurement, capacitors and MOSFETs, LEDs. Now the LEDs, I don't know what it is, but I think my stash might be going bad because every other LED seems to be failing on me. So I've had to rework a lot of the boards that I've made, and I've done like 4 of these already in the revisions. so I always have to double check these LEDs are actually working. It's one of the first test sketches I run on these, because they seem to be failing, the ones that I have in my stash. I've got a couple hundred left of them, so gotta use them up. And I have them in warm white too, so but I've been using cold white on the Smart Hub. It's the buttons that I've done. So these buttons that I've done in both warm and cold to test. Both look good. It'd be nice if they could do color change temperature. I think that's everything. I think I might end the stream here. Hope anyone who's still around, thanks for hanging out. Sounds good, Aaron. I'll probably chat in Discord a little bit throughout the evening. But cheers.